One of the things that has been bothering a lot of believers lately, and maybe it's bothering you, I know it occasionally bothers me, is what happens if somebody gets into political office that we just think is a disaster? Not only with our current presidential and national elections coming up here in November, but in general, what happens if a really bad person that's opposed to the things of the Lord gets into a particular place? And I know that many of you and many of the believers today in our country are very concerned about politics, about who's leading the country, where is the country going, what is going to happen to us or a country if a certain person gets into office. And I think at this very pivotal time in American political history, we need to really come back to some very basic understandings that the Lord is the Lord. Now that sounds simple to say, but it really, really is true. And I think that in this hour of politics being very divisive and very contentious, we need to come back to a basic understanding that the Lord is the Lord and He is in complete control of whoever is elected to any office, whether it's the president or the dog catcher. That the Lord is in charge of these things and that He is not going to allow His people to slip out and away from His plans and purposes for their lives. Now, one of the great passages in the Bible that I would encourage you to think about today is Proverbs chapter 21. And in the beginning of this chapter, King Solomon gives wisdom about God's role in the leadership of Israel, as well as in the leadership of all leaders. And what he says is that the heart of the king is in the hands of the Lord. And He directs that heart of the king in any way He wants, just like He's directing a channel of water. In other words, He can direct His heart in any direction. Now, one of the most exciting things if you study the Bible is to see how all of the kings, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, all of these various nations that had some very nasty people in them, and also who persecuted and really did some things to Israel, that in all of those things, God was somehow behind the scenes controlling and directing the events. He was controlling and directing the heart of the king ultimately to His purposes. And we see this even with the story of the Exodus. We see that Pharaoh's heart was being directed by the Lord to eventually let the Israelis go. We also see it in the story of the people of Israel going back from captivity during the time of Cyrus. And so whether it's Pharaoh or Cyrus or Nebuchadnezzar or Belshazzar, all of the kings in the Old Testament, even the worst of them, their heart was in the hands of the Lord. And we need to come back to that principle today because we often think that what is evil is going to hurt us. But the story of evil is that what people meant for evil, God meant for good. That's the foundation of our faith in the Lord, is that whatever evil comes into the world through any king or elected office, God is working for the good. That was the story in the book of Genesis with Joseph. Joseph was thrown into prison. He was betrayed, but what was meant for evil by his brothers, God turned for good in delivering the entire nation during a famine. So for us today, as we head into another political season, we need to remember that the heart of the king, all of our political leaders, is in the hand of the Lord. And He directs those hearts for His good purpose, ultimately for our good. And we need to remember that today. And we need to share that good news with others, that Jesus Christ is still Lord of all. He's Lord of this world, and He's Lord of all politics. To God be the glory. Great things He's done.